Maayong buntag to all of us. Thank you for waiting and being with us today. Join us as we get into grips with some of Roberto Bob Ong's contemporary works, how it depicts Filipino identities, how does the West influence us, and why you should definitely try this out. Here are our list of books to discuss. Aba, nakakabasa na pala ako. Discussed by Miss Belmonte. Bakit baliktad magbasa ng libro ang mga Pilipino? Tackled by Mr. Cayco. Macarthur, A Talk with Mr. Barnuevo. Ang paboritong libro ni Hudas, discussed by me. So let's start.
Starting to his book, Aba Nakakabasa na pala ako, by Bob Ong. Published in year 2001, the book is an autobiography of Bob Ong. It is about his life being a student until the year he is already working. Are Filipinos really westernized than it seems? Ang pagbabago ng alpabetong Pilipino, kung dati 20 lang ang alphabet natin, ngayon 28 na. Lamang pa tayo ng Ingles na 2 letters sa alphabet. Nadagdag sa atin ang C, F, J, Q, V, W, X, and Z. It seems that we could not remove the westernized in our identity. Starting this book, Aba Nakakabasa na ako, is written in a mix of Filipino and English language, which is called the Taglish. In this part, it can be seen Western's influence in our writing or how we express ourselves in writing or in oral. The English language is the most common official language with the recognized status in 51 countries. This influence does not necessarily mean that it alters the Filipino alphabet. It makes the Philippines or the Filipino keep pace with developed countries. Comparing the Philippines to America as the standard. Sa Amerika, isa sa mga trabahong may mababang sweldo ay ang pagtuturo. Di na nalayo sa kaso ng Pilipinas. Dito ka nakuha ang ideya na walang pera sa pagiging teacher. Filipino tends to compare the Philippine system to the American system. Anything that can be compared, for instance, Roberto Ong's statement portrays how Filipino use America as the standard and form a conclusion about the comparison. Another example, our accent when speaking English. Some try hard to mimic Americans' accent as they thought that it is the right accent of English, when in fact, the most important is as long as we pronounce the word clear and the receiver understand it. Each country has a different English accent, another system on grammar and pronunciation to the word. Thus, it is not essential to have a perfect American accent because it is not the only English accent. There are British, Australian, New Zealand, etc. As Asian countries, not only the Philippines, try to mimic a Western accent. Are Filipinos underrepresented or treated equally like other Asian countries? In general, Filipino are underrepresented in other countries. I would say that all countries have different insight into different countries. The insight of other countries about Filipinos is mainly because of news or magazines that do not cover all the Filipino qualities. Here comes the book. Because of the novels or other types of books, it could represent the culture of the Filipino. Books make it possible to have a depth understanding of a culture. Bob Ong's books are said to be the true Pinoy classics. Aba Nakakabasa na pala ako reveals usual Filipino traits and culture. For example, Philippines education system. Maraming pagkakataon sa pag-aaral ko ng tahasang idinikta sa amin ng teacher ang sagot sa National Achievement Test. Kailangan daw kasi itong gawin ng eskwelahan or kailangang mandaya. Bob Ong reveals this kind of system of education in the Philippines. Since from the very beginning, educators educate us that cheating or any dishonest act cannot be tolerated. There are rules in school that you will get a failing grade if you cheat and will be removed from the list of running with honors. But in this case, teachers themselves are teaching students to cheat. Family ties, forgiveness, and not giving up. Bob Ong describes Filipino families. Another aspect of Filipino that was portrayed in Aba Nakakabasa na Pala Ako is the forgiveness of Filipino. Roberto confessed to his family about his school life, which causes some commotion. It also emphasizes how important it is to be open to family. Roberto lost interest in his studies, but later he realized how important his study and think about his family. Besides, Bob Ong also introduces some Filipino traditions like Christmas and October, the Rosary Month.
Hi, I am John Bernard A. Barnuevo, currently a student studying computer engineering, and I am here to share a book that I have read that shows some of the identity of being a Filipino. Now I want to share you guys the 60th book published by Babong itself, the Red Book, commonly known as Macarthur. This was written in 2007, but the topic and the story are still relatable nowadays. The thing I really like about the books and novels written by Babong is that they were written in full of humors while it talks about the issue of the society. In this Red Book, the story hovers around a realistic look at life in the Philippine slum community. The story centered on a Filipino who struggles in poverty, drug addiction, criminality, and corruption. Our main topic or question is, how does Babong portray the identity of a Filipino in this book? Together with sub-questions, are Filipinos really westernized than it seems? Are Filipino racist? And how Western ideologies are incorporated in Filipino values? Our first two identities are so common and I know everyone is so aware of. These are having close family ties and being cheerful in nature. Filipinos are known for having close family ties. Unlike Western culture, Filipinos still live with their parents' house or their relatives' house even they are 18 years old above. This is so common where in our close parents, relatives, cousin, and second cousin, uncle, auntie, and so on and so forth. In the book, Filipino was portrayed as cheerful person and happy-go-lucky. Despite having problems, we tend to show that they were okay even we are really not. We are known for our ability to smile through ups and downs, and we always find something to laugh about even in our misfortune. Next is colorist. For those who don't know the meaning of colorist is a type of discrimination based on skin color. It is form of prejudice or discrimination in which people who are usually member of the same race are treated differently based on the social implication. Yeah, I know that this might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but in the present times, we prefer to have lighter color. We are crazy of using whitening products even though they were tagged that no approved therapeutic claims. In the book, the sales lady treats some of her customers based on their physical appearance. She even let them feel that they were being watched. But why? Because of his appearance or her appearance? Nah, that's a bad thing. I want to remind you guys that wishing of having lighter skin is not a problem. But just remember that our nature color is brown, or kayamanggi in Tagalog, and we must be proud of whatever skin color we have. In the end of the day, inner beauty is more what we need. Lastly, idolize white or Western people. In this book, it shows that the idea that going abroad means a better life and better future. When Filipino hear lines about foreign being highly towards Filipino, they become defensive and triggered, but their thoughts are not present on their actions. Filipino keep on buying foreign things, they patronize Western people, they send their children abroad, and so on and so forth. This book really shows our real action, what we don't seem to be. So why read this book? If you want to read the book about truths where you can reflect, if you want to read about social issues, if you want to encounter other perspectives, and the more importantly, the book is still relevant nowadays. Things I like about this book and the author is, first, every scene was so detailed. It's like you are watching the movie but you are actually reading it. Second, the use of words and the text, the quotes were so simple. It's like it was made for any age. But for me, my age requirement in this book is 18 years old and above. Reading great books like this makes me feel different. A college student like me focuses more on our studies and responsibilities. We don't have enough time to think back and relax, like thinking how we got here in our place. I understand that we are all busy molding our future, but a little bit of time of reading about understanding our past, our identity, will not compromise our future. Instead, it will help us decide and live a life of a Filipino. So before I end my session, I want to share this quote I got from reading this book, and I want to use this from my ending line. 2 dekada ka lang mag-aaral, kung di mo pagtsatsagaan anak, 5 dekada ng kahirapan ang kapalit.
Hello again, I'm Roland Carlos Baligod, here to discuss about Bob Ong's third published work, ang Paboritong Libro, and how it depicts certain Filipino. As Bob Ong entertains us once again with his acerbic wit, this book in its core centers a philosophical take on our faith, belief, values, truth, and the meaning of life, featuring a non-believing soul pondering the existence of the satirical deity in front of her, laughing and living through the daily life of being God. The author didn't fail to transition few of his life experiences into 7 chapters of satirical quips about politics, norms, and jokes only Filipino will understand. No wonder it's riddled with Filipino identities that are on point and straightforward. All of us can relate while laughing. The first Filipino thing that I noticed was being a grammar Nazi. In a skit where a person used English, stating most affordable from a variety of choices in a hotel, the receptionist, also a Filipino, laughed, making the person insecure and joking, most affordas ba dapat? People that correct improper use of grammar are godsend. They give room for improvement. However, there are some Filipinos that goes to the extent of not correcting but rather mocking our intelligence. We can see this in our Facebook, Twitter, the whole social media. As an example, Marian Rivera once lamented the apparent mindset among Filipinos that one wrong grammar makes you stupid. The second thing I noticed was being religious. Both the soul and the deity laughed because Filipinos have the most prayers compared to other countries in one skit, as if ordering a waiter around. The third thing that I noticed was being superstitious. Filipinos openly embrace superstition even among other cultures like Chinese traditions and rituals. We research our zodiac signs, birth year, along with luck that comes with our misfortunes, even adhering to Chinese principle in businesses and charms. Lastly, the know-it-all mentality. Maalam sa lahat ng bagay, ultimo gupit ayaw iasa sa barbero. Some Filipinos has the mentality that they can do everything by themselves, without profession in that field. In both ways, this can be positive or negative. It's emphasized in scene where a dad lovingly shaved his son to cut the perfect hair with the intention of making his son foggy. So, back to the questions. Why read this book? First, do you enjoy comedy? A series of stories that's relatable? How about plot twist? If you said yes to all of this, then consider this book already your favorite, because this is a book you'd put down with a smile on your face. Although I recommend that you read this book after burning through Bob Ong's previous work, especially Aba Nakakabasa na pala ako, as it rewards its audience with meta-humor that borrows a few nods and reference from previous title. As closing, this is the quote that would make you read this book. Hindi dahil sa hindi mo naiintindihan ng isang bagay ay kasinungalingan na. At hindi lahat kaya mong intindihin ay katotohanan. That's all. Thank you.
Last but not least, in another book of Bob Ong's portfolio is entitled Bakit baliktad magbasa ng libro ang mga Pilipino. focuses more on different traits Filipino possess that both promote and embarrass our identity. So let's focus first on the positive sides. So this article is one of the few positive traits that the author has mentioned, while in within it is usually trivial and doesn't have any good context at all. This article also has a foreigner's validation, which says that a country like us, the Philippines, has some recognition at all, not just mere catastrophe. When we usually look at other posts of foreigners, what do they think about our country? And they said, nah, I don't know anything about this country. By this article, we now know that there is something good about us, right? He says that he actually likes some of the Filipino foods such as balut, dinuguan, which is considered as exotic foods in their own country. This is actually another article entitled To Conclusion, Recognizing Your Roots. Please recognize your roots. Your culture has so much Spanish than Chinese or whatsoever. Your identity is a Filipino and that's all you are, just a Filipino. So what I would like to point in this dialogue is that we the Filipinos are not related to any of our Asian neighbors because of Western influences. Even if we ourselves look, do we have any similarities in Asian cultures? Well, except of course today we are already dominated by foreign pop cultures such as Korean or Japanese. But in terms of our traditional that already existed for around 100 years, can we see any dominance in Asian culture? No, right? It's full of Western, more on Spanish, American, overall the West. We have no architectural, artistic, nor cultural influence which is in any way Asian. As a result of 400 years of colonial rule, we are left with no identity. We are still trying to create an identity for ourselves. Yes, for me, since we gained our independence, I can say that we haven't developed in terms of our identity because we are still reliant on how we interact with other people. Our main ideologies are still Western. Filipinos are desperate for Western recognition. Let me read Parable of the Mountain Bike. So basically, Sam, who was 6 feet American Peace Corps volunteer, went to the Philippines for the mission. During his stay, he developed his own bike which is customized for himself. So when he left the country, he gave his old bike to a 6-year-old boy named Felipe. Since the bike was built specifically for Sam, Felipe can simply reach the pedal. So until such time when Felipe grows up, he still failed to reach the pedal. He never learned how to ride a bicycle. The bad news, his friends already knew how to ride the bike, wherein some made money for a living just using a bike. Unlike Felipe, he's still nothing but a noob. We the Filipinos were brainwashed that American way will change our lives when in fact it is not. We keep on believing that when we try to follow Western norms, we are far superior than anyone else. We fail to trust our own culture because we consider it as dull and old. Another popular Filipino term called colonial mentality. A YouTube video entitled How San Francisco Erased a Neighborhood. It is actually a Vox video wherein the Filipinos were tricked to go to the United States, telling them that working in the United States will give them the American way. From what we know, American way is something that life-changing. We are going to live in a first world country. We are going to experience nature when in fact it's just full of capitalism and exploitation. And that's the sad reality that the Filipinos cannot be satisfied with their own culture. I would like to show you, kaysa ipakita natin ang pagmamalasakit sa bayan sa pagtatakip at pagtatanggol sa ating mga kahina at kapintasan, mas nararapat sigurong harapin natin ang mga kahina at kapintasan nito at gawin natin ang ating magagawa sa pagpapaganda at pagpapaunlad ng bayan upang ang sinumang tao ay hindi magkaroon ng pagkakataong ito ay laitin o pintasan. Hindi ba? As a Filipino, we should try to avoid colonial mentality because it is consuming our brain. So we are not westernized as it seems. We try to be but we cannot because we're still conservative in nature. Most Filipinos are religious in nature. Religion is always conservative because faith embodies our opinion. The West are progressive in nature, but we cannot call ourselves progressive when we are religious. It is a conflict of our opinions. Why read this book? First of all, it allows us to determine our level of international validation. Throughout the book, I can sense that the author is showing how desperate we are to consider ourselves as Western. Another one is to keep track of social issues in the society. There are a lot of social issues mentioned. Then, it also explains how corrupt the government, especially during the year it was published. This book was published in 2002. Bob Ong himself wanted to show the different levels of problem. And lastly, the Western influence on Filipino society, which I have tackled since I have started reporting. How does this book change the way how I interpret the text? That the Philippine literature is not dying and has the potential to reach international audiences. Bob Ong may not be popular internationally, but in Philippines, I consider him as one of the most prominent authors of all time. That's why he himself has the capability to show the potential of the Philippine culture, the society, economics, and the most important of all, the politics. So that's all from my story. Thank you.
In conclusion, as different countries colonized the Philippines, the influence could be seen in Filipinos' language, culture, and religion. Their influence cannot be removed from the identity of the Filipinos. Their influence is imprinted on the identity of the Philippines. Removing their influence is like removing those people who sacrificed to make this country be in this state. Their influence is history that cannot be removed and forgotten.
Okay, so before we end this presentation, I would like to say what Dagitab means because that's the striking point in our title, right? So Dagitab simply means electricity. So Babong himself wanted to express the Philippine culture or identity by sparking a glare to its audiences. However, like an electricity, too much exposure is dangerous. In Filipino culture, too much pride could lead to Filipino trap. The author wanted to show the balanced sides of the situation. He wanted to show how good Philippine identity, as well as acts that could lead to demoralization of our identity. So that ends our webinar. We are Group 2, Roland Carlos S. Baligod, John Bernard A. Barnuevo, Jamie F. Belmonte, and of course, Francis Mark M. Cayco. We are now here to say goodbye. Bye-bye!